All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is a interview I have recently been extremely excited and counting the days down to make happen. And this lady's name is Penny Kelly. As you all, anybody watching this right now probably knows, I've been talking about it for days, and Sunday the thing happened, and she calls me right when I'm doing a video about her. There's a real, strange coincidence, but we always say nothing happens, on accident. Everything is timed perfectly and everything else. Which, on that note, we were just talking before I started recording, and I felt like maybe my role here is to help her get her message out. And I have a larger audience than some YouTubers, so let me use that platform and just let's see what this wonderful lady has to say. Now, to start off with, and I'm not this is probably going to go all over the place, everybody. I've got questions I want to ask. I've got some stuff out of her book that I read that I'd like to ask and talk about, and I had maybe a few questions from some other people to ask her. But you had told me, you said, "Oh, I used to watch Cliff High read his stuff and watch him, and that led me to you." And I'm like, "Wait a minute, you used to watch me?" And you're like, "Yeah, but after you got into the crypto stuff, I basically, you said to me, I already knew about all that, so I didn't really tune into that stuff." And you got that from these the little robed men. Now, I was in the book, and maybe I haven't gotten to it yet, but I don't know if I've seen that section, or maybe it was in your older book from 2001 about the digital currency.
No.
Or did you just leave it out?
I left most of it out. All I said in the book was that we were going to have this big crisis around money, and that we would have to give up money as we knew it. And that was going to be a tough call, and that we would have to do that because that money system was the system being used by some pretty corrupt people. And we recognized eventually that we had to deal with that. And the other thing, I think I just mentioned it very briefly, was that the money was all on screen. It was, it wasn't physical cash. Nobody had cash. And, it was just, it was one of those things at that time. This was 40 years ago, 1980. And I'm thinking, okay, what are they doing on that television? What are they doing with that? All those numbers on that television? And that was really, it was a computer screen. And I was somewhat familiar with computers, not real good, but back in 1980, I already had some experience with computers, and so it dawned on me, after I started writing the book, that had to be a computer screen. That wasn't a television, and that there was that the money had to be digital, and I didn't know how it was going to work, but I knew that we weren't going to have cash, and that the banking system had kind of gone the way of the dinosaurs. And so it was a whole different way, and lots of opportunity to change like the nature of how we thought about money. Right now, money is survival.
Yeah.
You have to have money. In the past, you had to have skills with Mother Nature. You had to be tapped into Mother Nature. You had to know how to grow food. You had to know how to take care of animals, how to, if you were going to eat animals, you had to know how to kill and dress and preserve that meat, all kinds of stuff. We don't do that anymore. So all of the quote-unquote skills have been lost, and the result is we have to have money in order to buy food, buy heat. Nobody knows how to build a house anymore, a few people, that kind of thing. So as I have looked back at the whole, way that money is unfolding, and when I first saw Bitcoin, it was probably, I'm going to say, more than 10 years ago. Because I was still married at the time, and I've been single for 10 years now, and you had to be a miner in order to get into Bitcoin, and it was $1 a piece. And I thought, oh, there's that money. I want some, but we had such poor internet here. There was just no way that we were going to be able to handle any kind of mining. So I kind of watched it. Pretty soon it was $400, and I thought, oh, oh my gosh. And, and then it just kept going up, and then it crashed, and I thought, that's probably good. It really is important to get the bugs out. And so, but it came back, Mt. Gox kind of got fixed, and and then crypto started going up dramatically. And so I just, finally I bought some and thought, okay, let's get involved in this, because there's a learning curve, and I think that learning curve is very important. And when you are responsible for your money, and it's not in a bank somewhere, that's a whole different approach to money, a whole different kind of responsibility. And that kind of responsibility is what the little men in brown robes wanted us to take on. So, yeah, I didn't say a whole lot in the book. I have said a little bit more. I left out a lot of details about what I saw in terms of governance. A lot of details were left out in terms of medical stuff that I saw.
Positive stuff with the medical side of it, or not positive?
It was positive. It was positive, and I left it out because at the time I saw it, I thought nobody's going to believe that. So I thought it was too fantastic. There were so many things that I thought this is impossible, and as I've watched each thing come to pass, I've kind of been like, okay, yeah, I saw that coming. And what you learn when you learn to look at the future, and you go way out there and look and see, and then you come back and you watch, you can begin to see the threads that are going to weave together and make a whole new fabric of society. So I'm watching those threads now, and I'm so excited. It's really neat.
That's two of us. I had a friend, I wrote this down, I think, in one of my notes. I might as well, it's kind of a perfect time to ask. So one of the things in the book, you talked about Canada, Mexico, United States, Africa, India, all breaking apart to some extent.
Yeah.
Including the European zone as well. And again, you can kind of see, like you said, if I got to see that a long time ago, and now where I'm at today, say, oh wait a minute, Brexit, Italy's ready to go, Spain almost had what was that country, or part of Spain they want to break off, Estonia or something, or not Estonia, that's not Spain. Well, I can't think of the name of it. They were
Italy, Greece. They've all been flirting with, let's get out of the Eurozone. Ireland, England, I don't think the Eurozone is going to survive. But that was part of my own grieving process, was my whole world, everything I grew up with and expected to be there and thought was normal, is not going to be there by the time I'm an old woman. So,
Wow. So I have a friend who's kind of a intuitive, I guess, or spiritual. He's a Reiki master, actually.
Oh.
And he said, hey, when you talk to her, ask her, meaning you, what she thinks of it, like, because they kind of felt like we were on a timeline, if you will, that was just pretty awful. Had Hillary won, it would have just stretched on over, like, oh wow. But that timeline, they feel like, has shifted to more positive. Not to say that everything's going to be peachy and great, just that one timeline, we're off that track. That's a good thing, but we're over here. Does that make sense, or does that not sound right to how you feel?
That is true. So let me say something about how reality works, okay? There are timelines. They're very, very dynamic. So here's an example. I'm just going to use my hand here. So, and this is the path. Here we are walking this path, and we get to this spot here, and now we can go in a half a dozen different directions, and whatever direction we choose sets the pattern and takes us in a new direction. That kind of thing happens almost minute by minute. In a civilization, it's not quite minute by minute, but you get the concept of every decision you make affects the timeline. affects the outcome, affects the pattern that you have as a possibility for you and the people around you and the whole civilization. So when we said no to Hillary and chose Trump, it was a huge test. And I talk about that in my Trump book, Trump and the Sting. That really was a moment when we said, we don't know what's out this path, but we know what's on that one, and we don't want that. And that shifted everything. So I call that learning to kiss the frog. We had to kiss this orange-haired clown and, you know, and see what kind of magic might unfold from that. And that's called a trickster setup. And that trickster setup kind of works like this overview, you know, the overview of that. You have these two choices. One looks normal. One looks like totally off the wall, which was the Trump choice, looked off the wall. And we took the off the wall choice. Once you say no to the direction you've been going in and you take the Trump thing, we took a new path. Then there's almost always a test. And we have been going through that test for for the first entire year. Oh, you know, he's not doing anything, and oh, he's putting Goldman Sachs people in there, and oh, these guys are corrupt, and blah, blah, blah. You know, and the whole Russia collusion thing, and Trump did nothing. It was almost like every time he got a chance, he opened his mouth and created some kind of uproar to distract people from what was really going on behind the scenes. And what was really going on behind the scenes was they were watching and surveilling all of those people who were corrupt and gathering hard evidence and getting ready to pull the sting. And so that began last October. And now we're going to come to a point where in the early 20s, and that point is going to be very difficult, where, you know, if we've been focused on, okay, get rid of the corruption, and now we have to switch to, okay, we're in creative mode. What are we creating? What do we want? That's going to be, we have to put some thought into, what's the structure of governance? How are we going to use this money? What rules do we need yet? What infrastructure? What has to change in terms of education, medicine, transportation, all that kind of stuff. So we have some exciting times.
And when you say how to use this money, you're again referring to the cryptos, because we're talking in the 2020s.
Yeah, right. There's we have some laws, but we don't have enough, and we don't have like the young people. I think are going to get it. They're going to carry us. I love that. But there's still a huge glut of baby boomers, that are still going to be around in the early 2020s. And that's going to be, how do we get them up to speed? How do, if they're still looking backwards, how do we get them,
my friend at work, Frank, we were chatting about something. He's like, man, it drives me crazy. I mean, down here in Florida, we have a supermarket called Publix. It's like the best supermarket in Florida. Really, really good stuff, like pay a little more, but better quality than like Walmart and that kind of thing. Anyways, so he's like, man, I was at Publix the other day, and he's like, there's this old lady in front of me, pulled out her checkbook. He's like, I didn't even know you could do that anymore. You could actually pay for groceries with a check. Like, don't they have a debit card even? Plus a checkbook? And I'm like, yeah, I know. It's just funny, but it's these habits and all these things that you're used to.
I know.
So like you said, these older people, like even my boss where I work, he saw the cryptos and stuff. I was like, man, I want to get involved. Help me out. So I'm helping him and trying to show him things, but he forgets. Oh, how do I do that again? Oh yeah, I got to do this and that. Oh, okay, yeah, I got it. So he takes little notes and stuff. But hey, we all have to teach and help each other. And it's one of the things you talk about in your book about these big family like units of that are kind of replacing the big corporate entities we love, and well, maybe not love. We think we love them today. We won't. But that kind of replaces that. Just this giant thing, the one size fits all. It breaks up in the. It kind of reminds me of the cryptos. I think in the video that I did like this video we're doing will be uploaded tomorrow morning, but I did 2 videos prior. Same thing. There'll be 1, 2, and 3 tomorrow morning. And I thought my second one, I got onto this a little bit, but I'm like, this kind of reminds me of cryptos, where if I download like the Litecoin wallet, let's say, I'm now a node.
That's right.
So now I can do and send and receive and be used as a node to transaction. So it's like, okay, I just became part of that, this family thing. And rather than have one giant centralized 5 or 6 nodes, let's say, we have decentralized, where this all of us is this a gigantic, enormous family, if you will, of nodes. So I'm like, wow, that's kind of the same thing, but that's cryptos. Right. So it fits right in. It fits right in with what we realize as, hey, we need to have our own land and do a lot of stuff that we rely on the corporate big grocery stuff with the fake food. Again, I'm reading this thing. I'm expecting. I haven't never read your book before, but you always have expectations of what's it going to be about. And she met these 3 little men in robes, or 7 of them, maybe 6 or 7, I think total.
6 or 7, yeah.
Yeah. So because I originally thought 3 for me. I was like, no, wait a minute. I think in the book she said it was like 6 or 7, but
right.
It's like, what's the story going to be? And it went from futuristic stuff, like we've kind of been talking a little bit about, to schools. That, like you mentioned, one thing about the school shootings and stuff, and how people are upset about the gun grab and all that, and everyone's, but in the book you're like, well, what they don't know is, like, almost like, yeah, keep up the good work, because that's going to pull people out of the schools. Parents are starting to say, I don't want my kids there anymore.
That's
or
true.
not even just because that, the quality of the education, again, from your book, it's like, yeah, you got one teacher that should have maybe 12, 13, 14, 15 kids in a classroom, and they're just packed full. There's 35, 40 kids in a room. Can't have really one-on-one time, and like you say, kids kind of follow each other and copy each other. There's no parental figure. The teachers wore out, isn't giving them the same kind of attention and love and care, if you will, as if they were back home in their own little community, let's say, or family group. And again, when you use the word family, she's talking about both blood family and not necessarily blood, just people who decide, this is our family, we're going to work together.
That's right.
And I mentioned, I think in that same video, was my friend in Tennessee, older guy named Pastor Dowell. And when I first started doing YouTube videos, it was around 2011, so I've been at it for a little over a year, and I saw him online. He was talking about gun rights and stuff, and I'm like, wow, that's a pastor of a church talking like that. I'm like, oh, this guy's kind of cool. So I tuned in, and I really liked what he would talk about, and I went and visited him a few times, actually. And the first time I got there, I'm just like, wow, he was on a bunch of acreage, living the community you're talking about. They had their greenhouse, they had people pitching in, and if you didn't pitch in like hands-on, they went to work and pitched in, financially. But you had a choice. You could do either way. Whatever the group decided, this might be better. We'd rather have a little extra income, or we need extra hands on deck, It was just really neat to see. And when I got there, I was just like, it just hit me like, man, how are they doing this? How are they pulling this off? Everything's paid for, no debt. Like, man. So, and this was several years back, 2011 when I first saw him. But
wow,
he's still doing his thing. He bought a little bit more land, kind of doing the same thing now. But for me, and I said this on in the video for everybody listening, probably already remember me saying it because they just saw my previous video when they see this one, was like, I love that guy. He is my brother. Yeah. But his thing, he's still, he's a pastor. So it's not one of the mainstream religions everyone's heard about. They kind of felt like we're going to go with what the Bible says, and that's our religion. Okay. But for me, I'm not that kind of guy one way or the other, like spirit, like religious one flavor over another or anything like that. I just like the idea of the group, the family unit, pitching in, several people on maybe more than several, on a piece of property. Everyone understands we're doing this, we're working together, and we don't have to go to church every Saturday or Sunday, or and do that, because my mind just won't go there with the religious stuff. So I just I separate that. I like the spiritual side, if you will, of looking at things. And so when I read your book, and I'm reading exactly what I just said, where they're like very crystal clear, we're not talking religion, because a lot of, and I'm not saying Pastor Dowell for sure, definitely not him, but the mainstream, the Catholic Church, all this stuff is really designed to hold people down.
I know.
And you're a sinner, and you're gonna burn in hell, and all this stuff. And it's like, and it actually, and people actually think about it, like that's really true, and it's really gonna, if I don't do this, I might burn it. Like, oh my God, like come on, like I feel like I'm light years ahead of people, but I'm not. I didn't get an experience like you. I wish I did. Like, I feel like telling you, I made a note at the end of this, final note, because there's a bunch of things I'd like to talk to you about, but final note, make sure to ask her at some point if the robed men could visit me.
Oh.
So, if you ever talk to them again, there's this guy, you probably have seen him, Jason Epor. I was just talking to him the other day. He'd like to see you guys. Like, if they were able to do that, I'd be blown away. That'd be so cool. I would die for an experience like that. Like, and other people are scared. Like you were talking about how scared you were right in the beginning because you're like, what is this? Oh my God, it was scary.
Right.
And here I am, like, where do I sign up? Like, for free, where do I sign up? I'm fascinated. I love it. I want to move forward. I want to help this vision, like in your book. Like, there's good stuff in here. There were so much additional things in this book that I wasn't expecting. Where you went, and I'm like. And as I'm reading it, I'm telling myself, I can't help it. It's just coming in my head like, she couldn't have made this up if she wanted to. She couldn't have just faked it, the stuff she's saying just to make a good book. You couldn't have made it up. There's too much of this, and it's covering everything.
Yeah.
From like, the Monsanto, although there's no names mentioned, but that's one of the companies I always think about. When you get in the book and you're talking about these corporations, and some people will say, the hell with the corporations, they need to burn down, basically, and others will say, no, I work here, and it's a wonderful place, and it's nice, and then others are going to be like, well, I do work here, but I'm starting to see this is kind of evil. Like we're doing things wrong here, and that like the whole thing. I'm like, oh my God, like you can kind of see that happening.
Yeah.
In certain companies where I'll see a little news thing about a guy that had to step down, or some whistleblower, the CDC whistleblower that said, oh hey, we did find studies with the autism and the MMR thing and all that. Oh, that was buried. Then the head of the I think it was the CDC or maybe it was the FDA. I forget. Maybe it was the FDA. She quits and goes to work for Monsanto or Merck. I'm like, come on. And this has already happened. This happened way before I read your book. But I'm like, man, this book was written originally in 2001. You'd mentioned to me you did it again. You kind of redone it in 2005 and fixed some things.
It was 1992 when I started writing it. It was 1997 when I published it the first time, and I was so unwilling to put the information out there. I just published 20 copies, and then what do you call that? Print on demand printing became common, and I thought, let me try that. And so I cleaned up the book and made a pretty cover, and the book took off, and I was like, oh my God. I didn't, and then.
And that was back then, right?
Yeah, that was 2097 is when those first 20 copies, I got calls from people all over, and quite a few from people saying, I got your book from a friend, can I get a copy? And I'm like, no, I only printed 20 copies. And they, can I copy it? Can I get the manuscript, blah, blah, blah. And they all said the same thing. I thought I was crazy. This book is exactly what I have been thinking. This is what I've been seeing. And, so then I was a little more encouraged and a little less shy. And I published it in, 2001, kind of cleaned it up a little bit. And then in 2005, I redid it and fixed some of the grammar and, made it a little more streamlined, but basically the same book, just easier to read. And I think, when I look back at it, the robes, when they first came to me and said, this is 11 years after their initial bunch of visits. And
go ahead, finish that thought, go ahead.
Well, they said, we want you to write that down. Write down what we showed you. And I'm like, what? I hate that kind of a book. And, and they're like, no, it'll help people. They'll understand what's going on. And I thought, anyways, you can read about the argument that we had in the book. And so I ended up writing it down and, putting those first 20 copies out there. And that was a deliberate kind of a slap in the face. Okay, I published it. There's 20 copies out there, so you can't say I didn't do what you told me to 20. Do. Right. And so it started selling, and it went up on Amazon, and it's been in their top 100 again and again and again over the last 25 years or so.
So if anybody wants it, like because there's gonna be telling you right now, there's gonna be people wanting this book.
Yeah.
Would you just say go to Amazon and get the 2005 version? Because I did see the '01 version on there.
Yeah. Yeah, I get the 2005 version. So that is the one that you might be able to trade in some of the used book areas for an original copy, but it's just harder to read. So, same information.
So what year was it when these, little men, robed men, just popped in there?
It was 1980. It was January of 1980, and they, the first couple visits were not very good. I was just kind of freaking out. And then, then I thought, okay, let's just look at their pictures. They wanted to, quote, show me some pictures. And so I did, I thought, okay, they'll go away. And that really, didn't happen. They just kept coming back with more and more and more. And there were some visits that I did not put in the book. There were 3 or 4. Those were mostly teaching visits where where they taught me about frequencies. And so I just left that out. It's like, no.
Do you teach that, or do you just keep that to yourself and use it yourself?
I am just now beginning to think that, okay, the public is ready for that kind of information. And some of my work in Consciousness and Energy Volume 2, in which I recount the 15 years that I spent working in Pinelandia Lab with Dr. William Levengood, we were studying plasma and plasma physics, and that's all frequencies. That's all frequencies. So it's an amazing story. We figured out crop circles, how they were made, et cetera. And that was when we discovered that plasma responds to consciousness directly. So, and you can watch that interaction. When I was interacting with the water sitting on the bench in the lab, and that water was hooked up to a chart recorder, you could see the impact of my telepathy on that water showing up on the chart recorder. So what
was that like? How? Walk me through that. You're a telepath now, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
how did you have that before the robed men, or was that something you got working with them?
No, that was part of the whole Kundalini. Kundalini is kind of the background of this. So let me just say something about Kundalini. It's this massive expansion of consciousness due to an inrush of energies through the body system. If there's too much energy running through, you can burst into flame and burn up from the inside out. If there's just enough, it'll blow your mind. If it's a slow change, it'll make your heart speed up, and you'll have like palpitations, and great heat, amazing heat. But the result, the term Kundalini is an ancient Eastern term that means the full spontaneous awakening of consciousness. And they always say it's coiled like a spring at the base of the spine and moves up the spine. I don't think that's quite accurate, but it does include the movement of energy up the spine, and it really changes everything about your life. Overnight,
how do you get it though? How does it just come? How do you just experience it? Like,
everybody asks that. You can get there through long, slow meditation, and maybe quote unquote the gods will smile on you and you'll have this massive influx of energy. For me, it was spontaneous. I never heard about it before. I wasn't trying to do anything. I was kind of a wild thing at that moment. I was an engineer.
In your 20s, perhaps? Is that what we're talking?
I was 31 years old. I was an engineer for Chrysler. I was working. I had kids. I was partying. I wasn't doing any special diet. I never heard about meditation. I wasn't into metaphysics, nothing of that sort. And what I think, this is my only explanation. Well, let me say it this way. if you let down your guard, if you step into a moment where you're totally open, that's when Kundalini has a chance to move. That's when those energies have a chance to accelerate through you. So, and I use the term or the description. How do I say this? It's like being a submarine, okay? And you're underwater, and and there's intense pressures all around you. If somebody pokes a hole in that submarine, water's pouring in instantly. The water doesn't say, there's a hole. Should we go in?
Right.
There's people in there. The water doesn't have a debate. It just, boom, it's right there. And that's what happens with Kundalini. If you step into a moment of total openness, then it's going to take advantage of that moment and blow through you. It's noisy. It's a roaring noise. It's shaky. I mean, you'll shake. I thought we were having an earthquake. So I was the only one having the earthquake. There's this, there's this feeling of a freight train. That's how I described it, moving up through the center of me. It's like this massive, explosion of energy moving up through the center of you, and it hits your brain and wipes it out. And you are back in what's called the source material, also known as the I am. And that's all you know there is I am. I am. It's just a bunch, billions of little twinkling lights. And they are intelligent, and you know that you are those lights. And so, that had happened in February of 1979. And then it happened again, and then it happened again, and then it started happening over and over and over.
So you get that Kundalini multiple times?
Yes. Yes.
When I went to, and I think I mentioned this to you when we talked the other day, I think. I told you I went to ESETI, the ranch.
Yeah.
I think, okay. And I knew that another guy I had met named Dave had nothing to do with any of this. When he came over and visited, and we were just helping these other two young men try to get out and give the word about that. Their event was called Money Changers. And they want to teach people about the current system, the current banking system, and how cryptos fit into this. And they wanted to go around from different states and stuff and doing this. So They said, Joe, we could come to Florida. We've got some time. I'm like, I'll tell my people on YouTube, hey, if anyone wants to go, I'll be there. In Sarasota, I'll go to Sarasota and meet these guys. And so I invited them to stay with us. I have an RV out back, so they stayed in that. But one of the guys that helped them in California, named Dave, said, hey, I know, I'd like to go meet Joe or whatever and mainly help you guys. Can I come too? And they're like, yeah, please do. So he flies in. We do it for the next couple of days over the weekend. And each night we come back home here and we're out by the pool just kind of talking and stuff.
Yep.
And he's telling me some little interesting spiritual story, which I already told everybody on my YouTube channel a little while back. When I was up in ESETI, I posted it.
Yep.
Just an interesting experience between him and his son. But when we were at ESETI, or even right before we got there, I think, he says to me and Jean-Claude, the guy I told you about earlier with the timeline.
Right.
So Jean-Claude and his wife Sarah were there, and Dave, me, and my wife. We weren't even at ESETI yet, but we were still in Oregon at this hotel, and nice, beautiful cliff edges. We were just hanging around the edge. And he's telling us, either it was that night or that morning, what he described as a, what is he called, a GSB or something, a full body galvanic skin response, I think is how he described it. And what you're describing to me sounds like that's maybe what he got. And he would say, I've a few times, like I asked my spirit guides for confirmation, and he'd get that bloop, instant.
Yep. Yeah.
He'd ask for confirmation, and then bloop, he'd get it again.
Right.
And he was describing this, and I kind of joked a little bit because he'd always say, "Oh, I had a GSV, this full galvanic skin." I've never heard of this term, so I'd laugh at him a little bit, like. And we were emailing the other day, and I'm like, "Yeah," I was like, "Listen, I miss hearing you say that, you had a full body galvanic skin response." That and we laughed again, but as you're saying this, it's like, oh my gosh, I think that's Dave, because he's now going ever since then on a what I'll just briefly describe as a spiritual path awakening that's crazy.
Yeah. Well,
for a guy that just Didn't have anything to do with that. Comes and visits me. Next thing I know, I knew I had to bring him to ESETI. I just knew it. And I told Jean-Claude, I'm bringing Dave, like, he's coming. You've never met him in your life. I know this was supposed to be just you and your wife and me and my wife. But this guy has to come. So they basically meditated on it, and they were like, yeah, we get the feeling he needs to come too. So that's good. And I was like, well, even if he said it wasn't, everything in my body told me to bring him. I would have brought him anyways, you know, because I just knew I had to do this.
Yeah.
And he had some experiences there at ESETI that just told me, hey, good job on knowing you had to bring this guy.
Yeah.
And it's just been, and then ever since then, it's just been going next level with this guy. And I'm like, holy crap.
Yeah.
But I think what you just described, I got to ask him or say, Dave, watch this video. It's Friday, and there's going to be a part where she talks about Kundalini, Kundalini?
Yep,
And,
that's right.
Is that maybe what you're experiencing? And maybe he can answer, you know, because maybe that's what it is. Because
yeah. Let me say something that I think is important to understand. Once you start having those energies move through you, they change your configuration and they change your brain. They literally rewire. So when you have a full-blown Kundalini, for me, I had 3 years of totally uncontrolled perception. And that included clairvoyance, telepathy, clairaudience, being in 2 or 3 places at once, being able to hear stuff that was being said, you know, 600 feet away on a telephone, or just observing somebody on the telephone. I could hear both ends of the conversation. Just an amazing number of out-of-body experiences. You have, when you have a full expansion of your consciousness, you have unlimited consciousness, and it blows your mind. I mean, the things that happened, I won't even go into it. It will scare people. But part of the I'll say the aftermath of that is that everything about you changes. Everything that had meaning doesn't have meaning anymore. Everything that you cared about, you know, you're going to sort out what's really important and what's not. You'll let go of people. You'll let go of jobs. You know, you'll let go of all sorts of things. And pursue in kind of a crazy fashion, you know, what's going on with me, what you're trying to figure out is how to be a new way. And there was almost nothing in terms of guides or gurus, and, you know, I didn't have any background in any of that. And so I was positive that I was going insane because my perception was all over the place, in the past, in the future, and you don't sleep. When I talk about an awakened consciousness, I'm talking about you're awake. For 3 years, I did not sleep. I would put myself to bed, and I would, you know, lay
out of body,
and
like out of body experience.
You end up out of the body. You know, I sat on the roof for a couple years.
So your body your physical body is essentially sleeping, getting the rest it needs. Your soul, or whatever we want to call this,
your consciousness,
a better word, yeah, that's even better. You're hanging out on the roof. You're just doing stuff.
Right. That's right.
While simultaneously knowing my body's back here.
Right. And you could go back and you know, say, well, maybe I'll go to sleep now, and you would climb back in that body, and then you'd lay there for a little while, and you know, you don't sleep. An awakened consciousness is awake, and there's, you know, I think it's important to understand that you know, the human body has the need for sleep, but consciousness does not. And that's a whole different, you know, there's a whole different set of physics that goes with that. So, you know, it was a really rough period. And if your friend is in that, you know, my sympathies, because you can't go back. You can't you can't
But you don't want to, I would bet now, right?
No.
Looking back now. Heck no, right?
I tried to go back. I kept trying to shut it off. It didn't do what I told it to do. It kept trying to, you know, what happens is I was a very, very curious cat. And I had all these questions and all of this stuff that I was interested in, and that serves as this kind of like a draw. It pulls whatever you want to know to you. Information just comes in. Anything you want to know. Doesn't matter what it is. And so all this crazy stuff kept happening. And I finally realized it was me that was doing it because I was the one who was curious. And so you end up coming to this place of total inner silence in order to shut off all of this stuff that's happening. And so then you have some peace, and then you can begin to experiment. And you can begin to learn what is consciousness really about. And I'll tell you what, it's a whole different world once that happens.
Now you mentioned, because I know the kind of subscribers I have are going to be on the edge of their seat, like, oh my God, he should just ask her.
What?
Like, I already know this.
What?
As you start just telling that story about 5 minutes ago, you started off and you're like, oh, I had these experiences, I could hear the guy on the phone and all that, and you said, well, there's some scary things, I don't want to say it because it might scare people. That's the wrong thing to say to my subscribers, because they're going to be dying to know. Is there anything you could even if you have to give a baby version of that, where you...
Okay. Yeah, there's a couple things. In my first book, where I wrote the whole story of what it's like to go through a Kundalini experience.
Now, what book was that, just so everyone knows?
The Evolving Human.
Okay.
Okay. So here I am. I'm totally in love with this guy. And, we had bought this beautiful little house on the bay. And, I'm working, he's working a different shift. And, one night I thought, well, I'm not going to work. I'm going to stay home. We're going to have a nice dinner. So I stay home. He doesn't come home from work. And I'm like, well, okay, I'll just wait. I left supper on the stove and I sat down to read, maybe 8 o'clock, and I'm reading away and reading, and all of a sudden around maybe 10, 11, somewhere in there, I'd have to go back and look at my notes, but I had this stabbing pain. And here's the thing, I want to say this, and maybe we'll come back to this once or twice. When you have a full-blown awakening, you feel it. If you're just thinking it, nothing's happening. You feel the changes. You feel everything. You feel every thought. You taste sights. You hear visions. You see music in the air. It's a whole, it's just a whole different. It's called synesthesia, but the whole body hears, feels, tastes, sees everything that you're involved in. So I have this stabbing pain, and I close my eyes. The instant I close my eyes, I could see this guy that I was madly in love with. He was across the city. We were living in the Detroit area, and he was sitting with a woman in a bar, and they were chatting and having the best time, and I'm like, this cannot be good. What's he doing with her? And she's flirting and carrying on. And, I watched them for the next 2 hours. They leave the bar, they go home to her house, they make love. I'm like, oh, I think I'm dying. And then I'm like, okay, he's leaving. If he's leaving now, he should be home, at such and such a time. And sure enough, he pulls in the driveway, comes in the house, and acts like there's nothing wrong. So, we go to bed and I'm just in shock. And the next morning I said to him, hey, if I ask you some questions, would you promise to tell me the truth? And yeah, sure. So I said, well, and I go through the whole thing and I tell him what I saw. So, and I could see the look on his face. It's like,
busted.
As I'm going along with the story. And so we get all done. I said to him, were you out with a woman, last night? Yep, I was. I said, was she black? Yep, she was. Was she wearing a yellow shirt? Yep. Did you go home and make love with her? Yep, I did. Was that about such and such a time? Yep, it was, and I thought I was going to die. So here's the caveat. When you expand your consciousness and you can know everything, you're going to know some stuff that you might not want to know. That is pretty scary. And you have to come to this place in yourself where you begin to see how human we all are. And there's, and you begin, because because I can see, you begin to see the signs that say, don't make that deal. Don't go that day. Don't get involved with that person. Don't trust that, whatever it is, whatever. And so you learn to pay attention to those things. So that's one scary thing. Another totally different kind of scary thing is that there were times when, I was, this one particular, it actually happened more than once, but this one particular morning, the first time, I thought, I had found a teacher, and she said, you should learn to meditate. And I'm like, okay. I'm not sure what meditation is, but I'll cross my legs and sit Indian style and get quiet and breathe deeply and see what happens. And so the breath or breathing is very different once you have a Kundalini awakening. And so I'm sitting in this position and I'm breathing, and you can enter into states of total fluid matter. Does that make any sense? So what happened was that I'm sitting, and I'm sitting here and I'm meditating, and all of a sudden I bent over backwards and I put the top of my head up against my tailbone. And I remember thinking at the time, I don't think I could normally do this, And it was the best feeling. It was just this wonderful, it was this feeling of stretching, like the pleasure that you see a cat having, or a dog when they stretch. It was that same kind of feeling, just, boom. And other times, you could become fluid, or I call it demassify yourself and move right through walls, or, have stuff. One of the problems that I had was, none of my watches would work. I couldn't wear a watch, and clocks would blow up and computers would crash, etc. And it was a long period before I could, modify that. But there are periods of time when you become non-physical, and that, there were a couple of other experiences that, that kind of scares you. It's like, whoa, wait, what happened here? So
was the I guess the non-physical part, or the walk through wall thing, is that more or less like what you were doing like when you were in your bed, your body was sleeping, and you were out, like a soul, or
Nope.
the consciousness, or you're physical?
Physically, you become. You enter into states of consciousness, and I've been in quite a few now. There's probably not too much that I haven't experienced, partly because I'm a curious kid, and it's like, well, what happens if I do that? I'm going to try that, and So after 40 years, you accumulate quite a bit of experience, and you begin to understand consciousness and how it works, and what is important, and there's a lot of. It's an amazing reality, and we are at such a low level of energy, we can't take advantage of the potential that is built in. Everybody is designed to unfold. The Kundalini is just an unfolding of, of the full form of yourself, and you become eventually a very, very wise, intelligent, and powerful being. But you can't get there without, some massive changes in the amount of energy that you maneuver through and the way you use your consciousness. So those are important.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a second, because you do kind of teach. I mean, some of the stuff, right? I mean, I think
Yeah.
I thought you do some kind of work with people?
Yeah, I teach people how to develop and use intuition, and and kind of nurture them along to say, hey, try stuff. Try
Yeah.
stuff. You'll be amazed. And it's kind of, have you ever done any or talked to anybody who's done martial arts?
Yeah.
You know,
Jean-Claude is another guy. Same guy. He does.
Okay, so you do these martial arts, and you just practice these routines over and over and over, and there comes a point, maybe, if you're, let's say, if you're not lucky, there comes a point where you get into trouble, and at that moment, you want to be able to have a routine that, by gosh, you slip into your power. And something magical happens, and you just go through this routine and kick butt. And that's the same thing with consciousness. You want to be able to develop your consciousness. Let me give kind of an example. Suppose you see, a runaway car, and it's rolling downhill backwards, and there's a little kid in the car, and you have trained yourself to have an instant move into the full power of consciousness. And and it doesn't always work, but it works a lot more than people think it does. So you see that car rolling, you see that kid going downhill backwards in the car, and there's something in you that flips into motion and sees the outcome you want and projects that, and the car stops, or it
Turns into
bumps
a curb or something. Yeah, bumps into something and stops.
Maybe there's a little ding, etc. Recently somebody wrote me, and they went to some kind of party or some kind of meeting or something. They came out, and a kid had hit their car. And, this was an ex-police officer. And it was like, and that was the tendency, was, I'm going to explode all over this 17-year-old kid. And something else kicked in. Nope, I'm not going to do that. He's 17. It's, it's not the end of the world. It's a car. Comes out the next morning, there isn't a single dent in his car. That's the work of consciousness right there. That's saying it didn't happen. When you respond to something in a very, very negative way, you cement that event and all of the negative outcomes of that. When you don't do that and you respond with a different kind of consciousness, you open up a different kind of possibility. So, so those are some of the things that, I think are they're common. They're common in my world.
Wow. So if you were to just tell the average person, who I'm sure there's a whole lot of them that are going to be listening to this video thinking, I'd like to try to experience that Kundalini, what's it?
Kundalini.
Kundalini.
Yeah.
A political thing came in, almost Condoleezza Rice. No, not her. Not that. Different one.
Well, you can just say, I want that awakening. I want that awakening of consciousness. You can develop that little by little, and it's much better if
kind of like a prayer in your mind. Like you just kind of say that to yourself, or do you feel like you should try meditating for once? And if so, what is that?
Meditation doesn't work for a lot of people. There's other ways, to use consciousness. I do some training. I set homework. People have to try things. They have to record, whatever directions they gave themselves, and then they, then they see what happens with that. I tell people you have to start paying attention to your dreams, because that's a third of your consciousness. Just, what are you doing? Why aren't you paying attention? Because that's you creating in other reality zones. And, what are you doing there? So I tell people, tell me your dream. And they do. And I tell them, okay, here's what you're about. This dream is going to tell me everything about you. It's an open window into other people's lives, and so that they can see that they're creating congruently and then see where they might want to change something. And it takes courage. A lot of people are scared, and I don't blame them because I was terrified too. But, if you get a little bit of support and you get going on the right track and you keep in mind your ethics and, and your values and the honesty, and you learn to phrase things, in a very aware manner, you can say the truth and people don't get upset. In fact, they love it. They love the freedom of the truth. So we have too much political BS, and too much social correctness, which is not correct at all, and missing a whole. We're missing a whole range of potentials because we're caught in this worry about, what are other people going to think? It's what you think is what matters.
Yeah, and not only that, oh, well, I saw someone's, oh, that's a police officer. They're not allowed to tweet. Like, they can't say that they didn't like that or something. But since they, on their own time, on their own personal account, said something, well, the sheriff's office or whatever, doesn't agree with this, we let him go. Whoa. This is on his own free time. He gets to talk just like the rest of us.
That's right. That's right.
It's just wrong. But it does look like that whole thing's, they're trying so hard to just keep that going. It just looks like it's failing miserably.
It is.
Slowly but surely. It's just fake news, fake media. It's like, again, like with the whole timeline shift, it's like, yeah, we did choose that, and we're starting to see those results of, hey, wait a minute.
Right.
You know what? Maybe he did pick this guy and that guy. I thought he was draining the swamp. Wait a minute. Next thing you know, those guys are gone.
Right.
Or the one guy stayed and like, well, you know what? He's actually been doing good. So I thought he was a swamp member. Maybe he's not,
Yeah, that's right.
I've learned to just not even get bothered by it now because I'm like, every time I got bothered, it turned out to be like, oh, this guy's like a master chess player or something. Like, Trump is really playing these people.
Right.
So it's just like they're hanging themselves. And, the other day, I see this video from on Twitter. Someone posted, it's Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton flying commercial on Delta. Oh. They don't have a private plane. I mean, they do, but why are you guys flying commercial? So my conspiracy mind is flowing like, they'll hold possible sealed indictments, and like, are you guys like on house arrest? Like, like, do they not have access to their private plane? Then the person said, I didn't even see a Secret Service person around them. So I thought, do you lose that protection? Like if you're about to be in trouble or something? I don't know. I thought it was very strange. And people are like, oh no, she's gearing up for her political run in 2020. She just wants to show people that, she's just like us. I'm like, now? Nah, I'm not feeling that. So it makes me wonder, are some arrests or some things finally gonna start happening now? You'd mentioned, for a period of time you could hear people on the phone from 600 feet away and clairvoyance, all these different things.
Right.
Did that kind of finally go away, and now you have other abilities, or like maybe like you can't use those abilities? It was just part of that process?
It quieted down quite a bit, and it began to be more of a how do I say this? Like if I give directions to go hear, see, or know something, that information begins to come in. Otherwise, I've had people say, well, what do you know about me? And I'm like, look, I'm trying to run my own life. I'm not paying attention to you. What do you want me to know? And so they start talking. The more they talk, the more I know, because word choice, body language, and plus I can see the lights around people. That tells me a whole lot. And, most people are just really good people.
Like an aura? When you say lights, like an aura?
Yeah, I call it the lights, people's light system.
Can you see through Skype, or do you have to be in person?
Once in a while, somebody will, I'll be able to see through Skype, but mostly it's in person. Yeah. So, but sometimes there's strange flashes or crashes, through the computer, and I'll be like, okay, what happened? So, okay, get your energy under control. People have difficulty with their cell phones all the time. Oh, you're cutting in and out, or oh, I lost you. If you watch and pay attention, what you'll see is that 90% of that lost connection is somebody got excited or had a tremendous amount of emotion and therefore tremendous disturbance in the force, and that cuts the connection. That cuts the connection right there. It's not the connection, it's not the frequencies. We live in this dynamic field of frequencies and they're moving around, and if you have a big blast of, frequencies out of your own brain, which is a projector of frequencies, you can disturb a lot of things. A lot of things. So, don't blame the cell phone if it's lost the connection and say there's poor connection here.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
might have been you. Blame yourself. Yeah, could have been you.
Right. Yeah, 10% might be the actual, connection, but the other 90% is you and the energy field that you have around you, and that's a very busy field. It's full of lights. It looks just like a star system, twinklings.
Yep.
Shooting stars, black holes, huge explosions of energy. So very interesting.
Cool. So one of the things we talked about the first time I spoke to you a few days ago was you'd mentioned the robed people, men, telepathically basically told you, go ahead and start like what you're doing today. Let's talk about some of the stuff. Like go ahead and start moving out with your story and kind of getting it. So it's funny that it's 2018 and all these years have gone by and they didn't exactly say that to you before, and all of a sudden 2018, hey, it's time. Do you have any thoughts on why is now? Is some interesting things coming? Do you have any kind of psychic visions maybe that you saw? Maybe things are going to be happening soon, and if so, what are they? I mean, I don't know.
So let's, for just a moment, the answer is yes. But for just a moment, let's talk about us as a civilization, okay? Here's the thing that the robe said, which, it is in the book, maybe in one line. They basically said, we want you to make this leap in consciousness. We don't want to see you go back to very primitive status. You've come to this point a couple of times now and you didn't make it the other times. You went back to primitive. So, let's see if we can make it this time. So one of the things, remember I said a few minutes ago, I'm watching and I see these different threads that lead into the future. So what is the future? What do we want to accomplish? We definitely need to get out of the corruption rut that we've been in, because we can't move forward with corruption. That just isn't going to happen. But we want to be able to move to the point that we are no longer tied to the planet. We want to join the space-based civilizations that are out there, and we can't do that the way we're going about it. So along comes, some scientists working with plasma. And what plasma allows is that it's going to lead us to the point that we can get off the planet and allow us to do some amazing things. If you have to get food from the ground and water from the ground or the air and air from the air and wood for your house and, wires, copper wires or, whatever for electricity and all of that stuff, metal so you can have a car or build a plane or a boat, you're tied to a planet. When you learn how to manipulate plasma and you can begin to assemble fields of frequency, you can create matter from thin air. And that's where we have to go. We have to get to this point where we can, and they're already doing it, where we can take the frequencies of a carrot or, some broccoli or eggs or meat or milk or whatever, and we can insert those frequencies into water, for instance. Or we can insert it into something a little heavier, something maybe more chewy, or paste or something. Then we can get all the nutritional frequencies that we need and keep the body restored and renewed and healthy without having to grow food, process it and all this other stuff. So, we can make water out of thin air just by assembling the frequencies. We can do all kinds of things, and that frees us up. Plasma has a different set of physics rules that it operates by. And one of the things that is very important in plasma is that likes attract. At the physical level, opposites attract and likes repel. So if you have this ability to use plasma and you have built yourself a plasma ship, which is part consciousness, and you tune that ship to the frequency, the signature frequency of Jupiter, you're on Jupiter by noon and having lunch and back by supper time. So, there's it's just a whole different kind of thinking and a whole different world. If we wreck our planet, we're going to need to be able to do something besides, get food and water and wood and, steel and copper and iron, etc., out of the ground. We could get maybe the metals, but the rest of it, it's an integrated system. And we can't be destroying it, or we're gonna end up destroying ourselves unless we can get off planet, at which point then we can begin to restore the planet in a very, very powerful way. And we're going in that direction. We're moving very slowly toward becoming a space-based civilization. It's going to be some, quite a few centuries yet before we get there, but I see the first threads of that. And probably, I don't think I know, there's other parts of our civilization that have already been able to utilize plasma and to do those kinds of things. And, and there's other beings here, they're kind of supporting and kind of nurturing in some ways, but, we have to be smart about who we are talking with and who we're getting help from and who we want to help. So there's a huge range of new issues that are on the horizon that are very, very powerful between 2025 and 2050. And that has to do with moving off planet. Not all, we don't just pick up wholesale and go, but just the ability to go out there. We have a space station, et cetera, et cetera. That's, but that's only a few people. What about the other 7 billion? So lots of interesting things.
So from 2025 to 2050 isn't the time leaving planet. It's simply where we start to work on getting the technologies and things in place to be able to do that at some point way out in the future.
Right. We have the technology. Now we have to learn how to use it and apply it and engineer it in a lot of different directions. It's an amazing, we need engineers and computer people. One of the things, here's something that, I think is really fascinating. When you take and I talk about this in Consciousness and Energy Volume 2. When you take a hydrogen sphere, just a single hydrogen atom, it's got a certain level of energy, and it just looks like a simple sphere. When you boost the energy going through that, and it can have a Kundalini experience or an expansion experience, it splits into two, and the two stay in communication with one another and act as one. It kind of looks like a barbell. If you boost the energy through that, and that base level, of energy is the lowest level that you can have and still hold the particle together. If you boost that, now you've got this particle that has a different shape, and it has a different function, and it has different characteristics, and it will react differently in whatever system you put it in. A lake, an ocean, hydrogen, is part of water or oceans. It's a very important gas in the body. it adjusts your pH. Hydrogen is the H in pH. And so all of these, there are thresholds of energy that everything is subject to. So when a hydrogen atom can get enough energy to have this expansion event, and it enters a new energy level, we move from the S level perhaps to the P level, to the D level, to the F level, to some level beyond that. And as you go up with that consciousness, or with that hydrogen, the consciousness of the hydrogen expands. So now let's pretend that that's aluminum, or something, a metal of some sort. It's got a base state of energy and a base level of consciousness that is not very responsive. If you increase that and it goes up, then that metal becomes different, has different characteristics. It will bond differently, and et cetera, et cetera. And so as you go up the energy ladder, you get materials that are extremely conscious. And that's one of the factors we have to keep in mind as we build our communication systems of the future, our transport systems of the future. Why not have transportation that's intelligent and that responds to us consciously? Other races know how to do that. We are just now beginning to say, oh, you mean there's something besides electricity? So we have a ways to go, but it's a very exciting path. And I think, plasma, because plasma responds to consciousness, we have to begin to be really conscious of our consciousness. So.
Okay, that's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah.
I've got a few little questions in this I saved from somebody. So they said, they had actually 4. I'll start with the 4th one, actually. I'd also like to know whether she is aware of the Hermetic Teachings.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm not even sure what that is. Can you give me a little introduction?
In a nutshell, the Hermetic Teachings are about becoming an eternal being. So the human body is designed to move through these various expansion events, and as they get to each threshold, their lifespan gets longer. Okay? So for all intents and purposes, you could say that somebody who knows how to live 700 years could almost be called an eternal being. 1,000 years, yeah, even more so. The Hermetic Teachings encourage people to begin to move along the path of becoming eternal. And that's it's not that difficult. You have to begin turning into light. The body turns into light. And once it turns into light, then, you don't have the death from flesh that happens. So, those are very ancient teachings. If you have not had, in this, in my opinion, and I hope this doesn't sound arrogant, if you haven't had a Kundalini experience and you don't really understand the nature of reality, then if you read the Hermetic Teachings, it's like, oh, okay, what's he saying here? What do they mean? What are they talking about? Once you have that Kundalini experience, then it's like, oh, well, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about, becoming an eternal being. And that is the path for each one of us. We come here again and again, and we're hoping to become eternal. And we keep trying until we ratchet up a little bit. Okay. It's a worthy challenge.
Cool. She says, or the same guy says, can Penny please describe in more detail when the roaming gangs would occur after governments fail, and do we descend into anarchy during this time? Do you have any idea of a range of years or? Okay. We've already started that. That started in 2013, pretty quietly. If we can deal with the corruption, then we can really minimize the gang
stuff. If we can get excited about creating the future instead of all angry about the crap that's already happened, then we can minimize the gang stuff. If we don't do that, then there are other gangs that really take over certain regions and cause a lot of trouble in the mid-20s, 2020s. So 2021, 22, 23, could get messy there.
And is this just USA or pretty much global, you could say that?
Well, it's pretty much global, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. I had a woman who lived here for a short time, excuse me, and she was from Latvia, and they had been part of Russia. And when Russia went down in 89, I think it was, or 90, something like that, they had absolute chaos. And she said to me, this was probably around 2000, 2002 or 3, maybe it was a little bit, 2005. Yeah, that's a long time already. She said to me, we had gangs everywhere. Everybody was fighting for power and position. And when she said that, I thought, oh, I saw that. If we're not careful, we're going to have that happen if the U.S. breaks apart. We'll have gangs that, what happened was that the U.S. started breaking up. And as soon as that happened, people were like, well, heck, I don't have to pay attention to any of the laws. So it became lawless for a short time. It didn't last long, but it was really a period of breaking out, more so than anything else. And there were some gangs in some areas, especially in the cities. And so people left the cities in droves. And, and I love cities. I love New York, I love Houston, some of those cities are fabulous, but they're difficult places to be if things break down.
Yep.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay. Yeah. So they said the reason we are in the social and cultural state we are currently in is because we've allowed socio/psychopaths to filter their way up to the highest levels. How do humans in the future deal with these types of people so that they don't creep back in? Additionally, becoming peaceful can lead to humans not testing their defenses against attacks.
Oh.
Did you feel the humans in the future were ignorant of violence and the yin-yang factor of good and evil?
So couple things I would say. Among other races, advanced races, if you show psychopathic tendencies, you just get your mind wiped. Period. There's no kibutzing about it. There's no arguing. They have zero intolerance for that kind of behavior. It's very similar to the way babies were treated 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years ago. If you had a defective child, they smothered it at birth. It was just, we can't have that kind of person. We don't want anybody in society who isn't able to carry their own weight. That's not how we do it now. We have a huge, love factor or compassion factor that we've been learning that has to do with defective people. And, and that is, if the system breaks down, a lot of those people will not make it. And that breaks my heart because that includes some of my own family.
Yeah.
But in terms of good and evil, that isn't the way that people of the future look at things. They don't think of it in terms of good and evil. They've moved past that. And so it's either it works well or it doesn't. If it doesn't, you re-engineer it, you rethink it, you redo it, you rebuild it, you take it apart and start again. But you don't allow things to get to the point that if you have to take it apart or redo it, that it causes a huge amount of uproar. So very much more attention is being paid to the trajectory of the consciousness and the patterns that are taking shape in that consciousness. And we don't do that now. We're just not there yet, but we'll get there.
Yep. And I think one of the things you mentioned in the book, the Robes book, was about like the fake food, the processed food, which leads to sickness, disease, more sick people,
right?
More people that you just described, whether that's handicap or autism or just problems. And I think the book also talked about if this is just increasing, who's going to be around to take care of these people?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
It's really, we're between a rock and a hard place. And that's like, oh dear. Okay. Mm.
And the final question from them: can she help or teach individuals to reach that was what we just talked about. Can she help or teach individuals to reach a stage of Kundalini awakening? If so, when I am crypto rich, can I come see her? Can she teach?
Okay, so the answer to that is kind of yes. But I think, here's my own personal opinion. We are coming into some technologies that will trigger that in individuals. We don't have those yet, but they have those among other advanced races. And we are getting closer and closer to being able to figure that out. There have been a few times I thought, well, let me just, hook my finger up to the car battery and let that, that voltage run through me, or some small battery, and see if that triggers something. But you have to be careful, because every body is a collection of frequencies, and you don't want to cancel out something important because you don't know what you're doing. And we do have, medical technology, energy medicine is here, and it's not widespread yet, but it's going to be very soon. And that technology is based on being able to cancel out the frequency of, say, a virus, or cancel the frequency of a bacteria. You need to be careful, because a human being is 90% bacteria. We have the ability now to cancel out, all kinds of, like the frequency of a cancer. If you destroy the frequencies, then the matter disappears. It just gets erased. It just dissolves into thin air. And so we have these technologies that are in a few places, and they're coming, but they've been pretty oppressed. And, and so I tell people, be careful. You don't want the pharmaceutical people coming after you, or, causing you some trouble. But be aware that energy medicine is the way of the future. And back, just a comment, it's just kind of, let's take the comment or the question that was a couple questions ago. You can, if you have a psychopathic person, you can wipe their mind. But if you have somebody who is really brilliant and they get some kind of disease and we haven't figured out how to fix that, you can take that and put it in another container, another body. And that's done all the time among some of the advanced races. And it's easy to do that, but it's more difficult to take all of the knowledge and the memories. You take the quality and the capacities of that mind and you put it elsewhere and say, keep going. And they will. But to try to get all of the memories and all the knowledge to go with that signature mind, because your consciousness is just like your thumbprint. It is totally yours, totally unique. And that can be copied and transferred, copied and pasted
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So we're coming into a time where we have, those kinds of capacities raise a whole bunch of questions that are religious and ethical, and, people are afraid
Yeah.
that, God is going to become meaningless. That's not going to happen. We have a different concept of God down the road a piece, but it's still there. There's still this amazing field of intelligence that we are in. We're made of that stuff, and it's not going anywhere soon. Just the language, the terminology, and the dogma, a lot of dogma goes away.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's probably good. That's probably a good thing. So someone asked here, well, maybe, I don't know if I wrote this from the book or someone asked me this. I think I've got this from the book. But it said they told her seeing backwards and forward in time is one of the most basic human skills in human evolution. So the question is to you, are you able to see backwards and forward, like right now even?
Yes.
Or was that, so you can?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you feel like when you see forward, is it one of the potential timelines, or do you feel like it's a solid projection forward?
So remember when I was saying, okay, here's this pathway, and you're walking this path, and you come to this choice point, and you can go in any one of 36 directions. That's when you want to look at the future and see what's the outcome of that path. What's the outcome of that one? What happens if I go this way? And then you choose wisely. So you're part creator in that process, and that was something that the robes, kept pushing down my throat, and I was like, I don't want to be responsible for creating the future. And they were like, well, you are, and you're either going to create it, consciously, or you're going to create it and have a disaster on your hand because you didn't pay attention to what you were doing. So that's an important piece. You look at the future so you can see which way to go and which way to avoid. And here's another thing. If you change the future, you're going to change the past. If you
change the future, you actually change the past too.
Yes, you do. Do you know what superposition is? Have you heard?
But I know the is it called the Mandela Effect, where that people this thing was running around the internet for a while, and I remember when I was a kid too. This little storybook, and it even had a TV show or a cartoon. It was called the Berenstain Bears. But everyone looks at it now and like, wait a minute, they don't even spell it like they used to. But all the history shows us they spell it the way we're seeing it today, but it wasn't the way none of us remember it when we were kids. Like, no, it was spelled that way, but you can't find it spelled that way anymore. So it was like, they called that the Mandela Effect. And it's been a few things like that.
How are they spelling it now?
It was like Berenstein instead of Berenstein or something. Like I'd have to go look it up. This is a meme from a little while back, but it just dawned on me. They're like, yeah, and they're like, this is how you spell it. I'm like, yeah, and they're like, well, this is what it is now. And I'm like, no, there's no way. So I go and start looking it up, and the only thing I can find is the way they spell it now. I'm like, son of a gun, because one of my cousins was huge. He was a little younger than me, but he was huge on the Berenstain Bears. So I remember all the books and all the things he'd always bring over when he was little. Yep. And I'm like, yeah, it was spelled that way. Now it's not. So I don't know if that's what, did we just witness something that, for whatever reason, changed the spelling of this thing? I don't know. It almost sounds like that.
Yeah, that's really what superposition is. Superposition is defined as, see if I can say it in a way that's real clear and simple. Everything exists. Oh, wait, let me back up. Everything that exists in all possible states. Okay? So,
yeah, I do know that now that you said that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so now let's pretend that you're going to have an out-of-body experience. Okay? So you get yourself all relaxed and you slide out of the body and you're standing in your living room or your meditation room or whatever. And you look around and you see there's the green sofa and there's the, the curtains on the wall or the blinds on the windows, or, there's the photo and there's, this book or that end table, blah, blah, blah. Everything looks exactly the same, except the door looks to be in a slightly different position. But you don't really pay attention to that. Or the color is slightly different, or there's something on the table that you don't own. Why is that? That's because when you have an out-of-body experience, you're not really moving out of body into the exact reality that you're in, that you consider your everyday. All you're really doing is displacing consciousness into another frequency set that is one of your positions. And since you exist in all possible positions, you can put yourself anywhere in space and time, and all you have to do is practice perceiving there. What's coming to you? What are you knowing from that environment? You don't just kind of do that on a whim. Usually you're going to have a reason for wanting to go see something or hear something, or look at the future or whatever. And so you have to learn to recognize that you're actually out of the body and that you're in another dimension, and that you're in a superposition state that's very similar to the one you just were in, but it has access to different information. And there's the magic key. So, you can begin to pick up bits and pieces, and you have to assemble a whole picture. And sometimes it takes a while to put that picture together. It's not just this instant magic thing. And so I call it collecting puzzle pieces. Okay. I saw that, that doesn't fit anywhere. And then, sometime in the future, all of a sudden all my puzzle pieces come together in a picture, and I'll go, oh, okay, there's the picture right there. And you can also give yourself directions to create a particular future, and then watch it, see what happens. So you'll get better at creating as you go along, but the sky is the limit when it comes to consciousness. And we haven't tried very much. We haven't experimented with very much of anything.
It sounds like it, because your book, I remember reading, I probably wrote it down in a little side note here too, but it was like that one thing where he says you haven't even begun. Like these things you can do with your mind are like almost like baby things.
Right.
And those things sound amazing. Like, oh my God, we're able to do that. And it's like, yeah, that's like nothing though. Wait till you can do this kind of stuff.
Right.
And I'm just like, man, and I'm like, well, how do we do it? How do I train myself? How do I even get to the baby stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Baby steps. That's really important.
So, yeah, it was really neat. It was just a fascinating book. Again, I'm only still got 75 pages to go, but
okay,
just so neat. And I'm like, gosh, she started. This started happening to her in the 80s, and then she started writing about. I guess you've clarified that in the 90s, sold your first few books in 97, and then redid I guess an official version or whatever in 2001.
Yeah.
And then again in 2005. So, man, that's so interesting. Now, you said earlier, earlier actually, the last time we talked, just to set this up, that you were into cryptos, and you mentioned that today too. Like, oh yeah, I bought some Bitcoin and bought some stuff. So you were into cryptos. Have you had any kind of vision, psychic, a thought, the men in the robes? Did anyone or anything, any experience you have tell you these things are going to be good for, like, getting into these things now while it's still brand new? Is it going to be good? You're going to, it'll end up being good.
Yeah, the only ones that I have invested in are Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum, and Litecoin.
Yep, the main ones.
When I go into the future, there's maybe one or two others that survive this initial early period, but quite a few of them do not. And there's maybe one or two others that I think are worth investing in and hanging on to. But you have to hang on in spite of the volatility. And they crash, even hang on even when they crash, and then they go up and they crash again, but they don't crash as low. And that just keeps on happening. And I think there was, in terms of crypto and digital wallets, by 2022, that in between those two time periods, almost everybody abandons cash, and stocks are not doing. The stocks are not doing well. The whole old system. I couldn't decide whether it was going down because it was just going down, or because people were literally tearing it down, deliberately making choices that took them out of that system and were looking for something else.
Like to get into cryptos.
Yeah, there were there's all sorts of new structures. Cryptos is just one of them, but these new structures of institutional structures, that's the only word I really have. Some of these new structures are very small when they start out, and they grow naturally. The new energy systems, those are very, very powerful. The new medical stuff, the new education, and the new education system, and then the technology that nurtures the education system, and the creativity that goes into that. We're at literally a point of recreating everything in our social sphere almost from scratch. And doing so with the technology in mind. And as I've looked at the whole crypto thing, there's not only are there a lot of new millionaires and they're young, they don't follow any of the old rules of thinking, and that causes some uproar, among some of what I'll call the old time rich people.
Yep.
Yeah,
It's funny because some of those old-time rich people we see on TV, Warren Buffett, and pick somebody, it doesn't even matter. Cryptos are going to crash and burn, and they're digital tulip bubbles, and I'm like, that's a prime example. Like, these guys are used to the old school way, and they invest in these companies or invest in some currency like what's his name? George Soros made his big claim to fame by shorting, the British pound or something way back in the day, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And they can't see, these digital things. But it's like everything's becoming digital. Our kids are playing with everything digital. Even the games they play, there's digital money, fake, but still in the game.
Yeah.
As digital currency. Like, this is gonna be nothing for them. This is gonna be completely normal.
That's right.
To use cryptos.
That's right. And I think some of those old timers they're going to be okay. They'll be fine. But the young ones coming up are really going to seize the day, seize the moment, and they have different ideas and different commitments. And some of them make just astounding decisions that really are good for a lot of people, and that is so unusual because in the old system, all the decisions were made just to make it good for an individual. And that's
the few at the top.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I like cryptos, because there's a group of very wealthy crypto guys that were running over to Puerto Rico not that long ago, saying, you know what, we want to try to get authorized to create a small, highly advanced, technologically advanced city. This place has been in ruins from the hurricane. Let us come in.
Right.
We'll use our crypto riches to help build it. Like, they're trying to do this.
Wow.
And that's the kind of stuff I'm like, see, this is what I talk like. And for myself, I feel like if I can, I'll hold along as anyone, because I understand that what you just said, the ups and the downs.
Yeah.
Believe me, I understand it probably like nobody. So
Yeah.
I feel like when I'm being patient and it finally pays off, I may have a pretty substantial amount of money, hopefully, anyways. But I've got my ideas of, well, what do I do with it? Do I just become a rich, if I'm rich, a rich snob and do it, or do I do something good with this money. Let's build one of these little, compounds, this family unit, potential business. And hey guys, we're all live on the same property. We all help together. We all do this for the world. This is a business we do, or whatever it is.
Right.
Like, I can't sit there. Now, my mom, though, she's psychic. She's told me a bunch of things in my time.
Good.
And she's always been right. And we got this house 9 months ago, I think now.
Okay.
And it's thanks to cryptos, by the way. It got me here. And I love the place, but my mom's like, you're moving. You're moving in less than 2 years, or 2 years, or about there. I'm like, from this place? I have my own office. I have my, separate from the house. Are you sure?
Wow.
She's like, yep, I see you. And I'm like, well, is this shit hitting the fan or what? Like, are we getting the hell out of Dodge? She's like, no.
No.
Just some kind of opportunity or something. Like, hey, your wife, Evelyn, let's, this thing's staring us in the face. Let's take this opportunity. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
So I have all these ideas, like the greenhouse stuff. I think in your book, I would talk, like, a lot of times the greenhouse is attached to the kitchen. You just walk in and get something to eat, fresh, not cooked food, right off the vine.
That's right.
I'm like, oh, yeah, it's raw food diet stuff. So I'm like, man, got all these ideas, but I also want to keep the thing, like, if we stay in Florida, it gets hot. We don't really worry about winter. In winter, we can start growing stuff, but it's the summer, you can't grow anything. So I'm like, well, we had one of these things, whether it was air conditioned, or they have these things where you just bury the pipes underground about 5 feet and then go out, 150 feet or so in a loop, and the ground temperature stays about 50 or 60 degrees, and you just have a fan at the end instead of an AC unit, and it circulates the air from the ground temperature. It just keeps it, 60, 70 degrees in this place.
That's fabulous.
All year round. So I'm like, man, my buddy Bill was telling me about it. So I have all these ideas. I'm like, well, I could start now, but I might be leaving. I might be leaving in a year and a half from now. So do I do all that and throw it away? No, I feel like whatever this next venture is, according to my mom, that's when I really want to get busy. But I got a sneaky suspicion it'll be probably close to 2020, because that will be right around 2 years technically that we're here. And the funny thing is, you mentioned how he used to watch Cliff High and read his stuff. He ran my name in the Webbot report a few years ago and said, hey, I do this every now and then for my friends, and you're in it. I don't publish it publicly, but here's what it said. And it was some little minor thing. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then it happened. Like, I don't remember if it was later that year, but it happened. And me and my wife were like, whoa, that's cool. Well, then he messaged me again and is like, you're in there again.
Yeah.
It says you're going to have a near miss at work, like a workplace accident, near miss.
Oh.
Like, it won't happen, but it'll be a close one. I'm thinking, okay, I'm an IT guy. I sit at a desk typing, programming sometimes, like,
Yeah.
come on, what do you mean near? I'm like, okay. It was only and he's like, oh, if this is right, it's only a few weeks away, if the timing's right. Well, sure enough, I had this little computer next to me on the ground, and it had the power supply. A lot of times on a little computer tower, it's at the top in the back. Well, this power supply of this particular tower was at the bottom, and they make something like that. And my foot was right next to it. And this thing shorted out, and sparks were like lightning bolts flying out of this thing towards my foot. And I'm like, just move my foot away, like, whoa, making all this electrical noise, burning up, which normally a power supply just doesn't do that. Normally when a power supply dies, the computer just, boop, it's dead. Okay, the computer won't turn on. I wonder what's wrong, This thing was smoking and stinking, like, oh my God. So my heart's beating, like I almost got electrocuted. And I'm like, oh my God, Cliff High. So I run out to my car to do a video to tell everybody, like, oh my God, it just happened. Because I'd already told them I was in it and what it said, like, I'm going to have a near miss. So a while after that, he sends me one more thing. He says, you're in here again.
Oh.
He said, this time it's not scary incident or anything. He says, but the data has Enterprise Joe is the meme for you around the year 2020. Enterprise Joe, I don't know what it is, but universe likes you, man. I'm like,
Very good.
the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
And this was in like 2016. I owned a couple Bitcoin at the time, I think. Maybe, no, I had 3, I think, total Bitcoin, and I shared it with a guy, so I actually had half of that. I wasn't thinking, like, was it going to be crypto related? That wasn't even in my mind. I was just thinking maybe my YouTube channel or this or that. Yeah, couldn't come up with it. But now that I see crypto, and I don't know, I'm starting to see a little bit of a vision here. But again, around 2020, if this is going to take, go ahead.
We're coming to a time, we're in it now, where jobs are going away, and people have to make how do I say this? They have to make their own work. They have to find a way to work with one another without the job setting. One of the things the Robes said about the big corporation was the whole purpose of the big corporation was to teach us to work together across national boundaries and around the globe and cooperate on big projects. And, and I thought, oh, that's a different way of looking at it. And they said, you're not going to have jobs, but there's plenty of work that has to be done to survive. And so you're going to have to decide what kind of work you want to do and how you want to contribute. And maybe what you're saying there about you in 2020 is that you have moved away from, quote unquote, the job and have started to be involved in work of your own choice that contributes in some way, and that is your own business or is the base for a business that grows. So,
well, here's the funny thing. When my friend Jean-Claude came by for the first time and I met him, he said, Joe, I saw you on one of your first videos you ever did, maybe 2010 or something.
Okay.
When I saw you the first time, I said, I will be with that guy one day. I will be in his presence, like next to him somewhere. He said, I saw the vision. I knew it was going to happen.
Okay.
So fast forward till last year, end of last year, him and his family came down and we visited. I didn't even know him then. I never had a conversation with him. He was just a subscriber that watched me from 2010. But when he was here, he said he could read people by just about this far away from there, like through his Reiki stuff. I guess he does. He can sense.
Yep.
And he said when I was in kindergarten, I used to tell the kids things and they would freak out, But he's like, I haven't done it in a long time. I don't usually do that. I was like, well, come on, you're in my house. Let's go, do it.
Yeah.
Come on, give me a reading. So we were out here actually in this office. And he did it. He said he starts telling me some things that I know he wouldn't know, So I'm like, okay, he has an ability here for sure. And one of the things he said, he's like, I see your day job, just slowly fading. It's fading, and then it's gone. So fast forward to fairly recent times. This Monday, so 4 days ago, a guy I used to volunteer for the sheriff's office years ago for a number of years. It was a citizen position.
Yeah.
But he was one of my patrol partners, this guy Mike. And he's good as database. He's as good, maybe better, who knows, than I am. And I said, well, when I leave my company that I work for now, he's probably the guy I'll see if he's interested in taking over. Cool. And so long story short, he started Monday as a part-time, and my boss is like, well, we don't want you leaving like as soon as possible. Like, you can stay for like a long time if you want, like 8 months, a year. And I'm like, all right. I was like, I'm not gonna leave you guys hanging. I'll make sure he is so ready to go, that we won't have a problem. So and so the other side of it was, I created a Patreon group where I post things a lot, mostly to do with cryptos and some of the psychic woo-woo stuff and things. And so I told everybody, hey, I got a Patreon group over there if you want to join. And it's a monthly thing where they can, you get paid little fees or whatever you want to put in there. So I'm like, all right, because I kind of want to head that way. And I've had a lot of people ask about like just the crypto stuff. Like, could you just, we'd gladly pay for that information rather than watch all your political videos and everything all at once. So I'm like, all right. So ultimately, that's where I did. And I had a very good turnout of people show up, basically. And it's all happening right now. So, and I'll try to stay at my job as long as I possibly can, to be honest with you. Make sure that they're totally happy, because I'm like, at some point they're going to be like, all right, we don't need to pay both of you. Joe, we love you, but this guy picked it up good. Hit the road, buddy. So
push it out here.
Yeah, so I'm kind of feeling this. I'm starting to see that little path.
Yeah.
Or like you called it earlier, the strings or whatever being weaved or whatever you were saying. That's interesting. So
weave together.
Yeah, that's it. So it's really, really neat to see this stuff. But I'm just like, I'm gonna when we're done talking and stuff, and I'm gonna like really focus. Like, how the heck do I have one of these Kundalini experiences? Like, I want one.
I don't know. There's so much disruption that occurs when you have that I mean serious disruption. And and it is it can cause some uproar in the body as well as in the mind, and it does definitely cause a big uproar in all your relationships and all of your attitudes toward the world, and whatever you're involved in. And so you be careful, because sometimes
Careful what I wish for.
Yeah, exactly. Wow.
Yeah, maybe my role is not for that. Maybe my role is just to do what we're doing today. This,
Yeah.
like I was telling you on the phone, I just out of nowhere this year, it was so. When you
Yeah.
said, "Oh, the robes came to me this year and told me twice now," it's time to go ahead and move forward with the story and
Right.
help awaken people's consciousness and stuff.
Right.
I'm like, man. So you say 2018, huh? Throughout this book of yours I've been reading, I keep seeing you in there. Oh, it was July of this year. Oh, it was July of that time. And I'm like, well, that's funny. It's July of 2018. I'm having an interview with this lady. And that's all she kept talking about, July and all these different years, which is just, it was neat. But all these connections, and it's all woo-woo related. Psychic this and remote viewing and all this stuff,
Yeah.
like, has been just in my face. And I recognize it, so I'm not just trying to push it away. Like, no, I love this stuff. Give it to me. Making a connection with Michelle White Dove, Sharon Michelle. Now I've got you over here,
Right.
Jean-Claude. Like, just amazing things. And I'm like, when I sit back and see how fast this has happened over the last like 3 months,
Wow.
I'm just in awe. Like, wow. And I think my role, not that I'm psychic because I'm not, but is just to get the people to see you guys and listen to what you guys have to say,
Well-
and they'll do it through me.
Do you know what a maven is?
A maven? No.
Maven. It's a connector. So, I think of you as Joe the Maven.
Okay.
It connects people, ideas, kind of works like a bridge between people. And that is such an important role, because without that, the connections don't get made and nothing works.
Yep.
So, yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, so like I said, I saw that the one lady, I can't remember her name, maybe it was at Meredith something back in April.
Regina Meredith?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she had maybe 4,000 subscribers when I looked,
Yeah.
which not that I'm trying to say, well, I've got 80,000. It's just simply, I've got more. Let's get it to more people.
Right.
That's all. It worked. She did her thing. I'm gonna do mine, and maybe someone will see what I'm doing that has a lot more than me.
Wow.
And maybe they reach out to you and some of these others. Who knows?
Yeah.
It just spreads or whatever. So it's just, this is it. You got the tools, use them.
I think we have to make that leap that goes from, I love the word woo-woo. We used to call it foo-foo. But
Okay.
we have to make that leap from woo-woo and foo-foo into saying this is consciousness. This is
Yeah.
about consciousness. This isn't woo-woo, even though you can use that.
Yeah, the old schoolers called it that. We had to. It was for their minds. That's why we called it woo-woo. It was really for their minds, so they wouldn't laugh at all.
Right.
We'll call it woo-woo for you guys.
There's a lot of people who've been involved in New Age kind of stuff who end up on my doorstep and who say, well, what about this? And there's so much that isn't true in the New Age field.
Yeah.
It's mythical.
Can I just throw one out like flat Earth?
Yeah.
It's driving me nuts. It is driving
know.
me nuts.
I'm
You
like,
actually saw Earth
Right.
from elsewhere in that book.
I did.
I'm pretty sure it was spherical, correct?
Watched it rotate. It was, oh my God, who's going to buy that flat Earth thing? Talk about disinformation. So, yeah, we're moving into an understanding of the self and of how we are and what comes along with that is a deeper understanding of the nature of reality. And it is very different from what most of us grow up thinking. And it's time to start at least exploring that, because it's a kind of a scary thing. Most people are afraid of their own power. And so you have to go at it kind of slow. And I remember the robe saying to me something to the effect of, put this in this book, and then, it'll wake some people up, and then, the world is going to make this shift, and we need you to help guide them. And I was thinking about the amount of uproar that happened in my own life, and just thinking, OMG, if that happens on a global scale, I don't know that we'll get through. But, at the very least, I think if we kind of go at it a little slowly, we can get through and we can come to a whole new understanding of the nature of reality and what's possible. And yes, that will make a lot of our old thinking outdated, etc.
So what? Yeah, but so what? Needs to be.
Yeah, because the potentials that come along with that new understanding are phenomenal. And, and that is our birthright. And there's a lot of beings out there that are saying, come on. And I'm like, okay, yeah, we're working it.
And wasn't it Edgar Casey? I think it was him. Maybe if you'll know or not.
Huh?
Where he said, once the man starts investigating the unseen stuff, you'll learn more in like 10 years than like all the history combined, previous history or something.
Right.
If we would just study it instead of just
Yeah, unbelievable. There's just so much fabulous stuff that's waiting for us, and that's physical stuff, mental stuff, emotional stuff, technological stuff. The whole financial thing shifts and is different. Consciousness, whatever your passion is, it's waiting to be developed. And that's what your true spirituality is. True spirituality is the development of the spirit of your unique individual self. It is not trying to fit yourself into some religious or new age mindset. That is the last thing. That's, I've got some friends, in other dimensions, and they call that being a doormat. You just swallow the religious and new age stuff, and you keep trying to fit yourself into that box, and it doesn't work. You can't get anywhere.
Right. You need to be in your own box.
Yes. And then you open the lid, and it's like, whoa, okay. Look at what we have here.
Wow, incredible. This is just amazing. I just reading your book, seeing how everything was in there, and then the other topics you get into. And here's the thing: I still have the page open just so everyone knows, because some people are like, well, is like some of this bad stuff in the next 10 years or 20 years? It's like, well, not necessarily so. Like, here's the one thing: the man you have just seen is yours. Oh, this is the part where they show you your reincarnated self later. But anyway, the man you have seen is yourself in the year 2413.
Right.
Guys and girls, that's a long time away for some of the stuff that they showed her. So don't get in the mindset of, oh my God, the next 10 years it's going to be, we got to start, massive prepper mindset. It's not necessarily what this all means. It just means that we're slowly creeping and there's going to be some pain on the way there. And some of that is the government we've relied on, the healthcare systems, all the stuff we've relied on is not going to be able to support all of us and all the sickness and everything that goes with it. We really need to get back to some level of self-sufficiency. So like you said, it'll be the ones that left the corporate ladder first.
That's right.
Who had the time to sit back and get out of that and start making some of these changes for themselves. They'll actually be okay because they got out early. Whereas other people are going to hang on by a thread. Oh, the corporate power is how I get my paycheck.
Yeah.
I got to do what they said. Yeah, but you're poisoning the earth. No, it's fine. And I'm just not realizing it. So I always think of Monsanto when I see some of the stuff you wrote in here. Like, oh, that is like one of the companies that's just going to be responsible at some point when we look back as freaking poisoning the earth to some extent, with their
that's true
different chemicals. But again, if we can get the technology to fix the stuff, and you talk about plants and everything having like its own energy field, and how when you eat it, it's not just nutrients. There's actually an energy that comes with it. And I think they mentioned like when you plant the corn and the corn comes up, the corn, we don't look at it as if that corn was actually there for me to keep me to re-energize, or what was the word? Like if my energies were off a little bit or I was sick, how some of these certain plants and things could put your energy back the way it was. And it's not just this nutrients, but it really gets you to think about everything on this planet. The planet itself is a living thing.
That's true.
Everything on there, from the plants, the animals, the insect, everything has a role.
Yeah.
And it just, I don't know, like I say, I wish these little robe guys would pay me if it's. I was gonna say, do they have a sense of humor? Do you know? Like,
they were pretty careful with me because I was so afraid, you know.
Okay.
And I did, one day toward the end, one of the later visits, I said something and they replied their usual way. And I was like, do you guys ever lighten up? And they were like, not with people like you. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, they said when you have that level of fear and you're struggling with so many things, because there were so many changes happening in my own consciousness at that point, they said we find it's best to just be very steady, cheerful, bright, positive, no freakouts, etc. Totally respectful. They were totally respectful.
Yeah.
In fact, when I first wrote the book, when I first started writing, all that kept coming out was all of the fear that I was feeling back then, and I dumped it. I must have rewritten that manuscript probably 6 or 7 times, trying to get their particular sense of humor to come through and be communicated in the words. And finally, I did it pretty close. It was hard to translate telepathic, messages into written language. That was very difficult. But, they have their way of kind of like, yes, you will do this. And, there have been a few things when I came to publish the book. I finished writing it. And I thought, okay, I wrote it. They didn't really say I had to publish it. I'm not publishing it. I'm not putting it there. And so I put it away. And I had 2 people who were here at the B&B, and they were 2 women. And they came to do, some healing and some detox and stuff. And so one of them is in the Blueberry Suite. And there was this big window at 4 to 8 feet. It was 4 feet wide, 8 feet high. And right outside that window was a tree. And so she is in that room, and I come in the kitchen one morning, and there she is, and she's all, and I said to her, Jean, what happened? What's the matter? And she said, well, I had such a rough night. And I said, why? I'm so sorry. And she said, well, I woke up and I thought it was morning, and I couldn't get my eyes open, and I just couldn't seem to come to. She said it was like my eyes had weights on them. And she said I ended up going back to sleep feeling guilty because she's an early riser. She likes to get up at 5, 6 every morning. And she said I woke up again. It seemed like a long time later. And, and I couldn't get my eyes open. And she said, I go back to sleep feeling guilty, thinking, oh my gosh, it must be 8 o'clock in the morning by now. She goes back to sleep. She wakes up again. She said she manages to crack one eye. And she sees that it's light out. And she said, she, with all of her willpower, she's able to roll over. She's thinking, by this time, it's got to be 10 o'clock in the morning. And it wasn't. It was maybe 6:30. And she sees this light, and she kind of, she's going to roll over and look out that big window. And there in the tree, the little men in brown robes are standing among the branches.
And she can see them.
Yeah. And she said, oh my God, she said, I just didn't know what to think. I thought maybe I was still dreaming, but I was wide awake, and the whole room was filled with light. And as soon as she said that, I thought, damn you, I know why you did that. It was because I had just put the book away and said they weren't real. I'm not publishing that damn book. And,
So now she got to see them.
Yeah, and now there's a small group of people that I'm in touch with, a lot of them in California, but some in Europe and some in South America, who have written and said, oh my God, I've seen these little men in brown robes. So there's a little clique of people that have kind of gathered around that information. And so I'm it's kind of been comforting to think, okay, I'm not the only one. So who knows, maybe they'll come and visit you.
Well, I was going to ask you, if you, like after we were to hang up here, if you were to try to reach out to them, I mean, normally they come to you.
Yeah.
So are you able to, like even now or in a few minutes or whatever, if you wanted to, telepathically reach out to them and actually get a response? Like, would they actually answer you? Or do you just kind of put the thought out and then wait to see?
Yeah, you put the thought out. You put the request out. You never demand. You never expect. You just put the request out there. I can send a message and say, hey, could you go see Joe? Could you
do it. Seriously, do it. I would love to tell this story. Like, guys, I mean, I'd be thrilled to death. I look back when you were younger and you were terrified. I'm like, I've been dying dying for something like that to happen to me. Like, like right now, could they just show up as I'm talking to you? Like, guys, just sit there and we'll chat in a minute. Like, let me hang up with her. I would love for that.
And this is true for all of the advanced people, whatever race they belong to. They don't waste time. They don't chat like we chat. They just don't spend their time doing that. And so quite often I have thought, okay, well, if you have a real need, they're there. If you just,
Well, and here's the thing, because where I was going with this, it wasn't honestly like just for them to show up and say hi, But I was thinking, like, if this happened, maybe they could guide me. Joe, here's your role for the next whatever, like Enterprise Joe. We know what it is, you don't, but we do, and we're gonna nudge you down the right path, just to make this little transition of consciousness and everything a little easier for everybody else. Like, use me for your,
They might, but if you're on the right path, they would glance at that and say, he's doing fine. Just leave him alone.
Yeah.
You'll arrive at a point where some enterprise, I've said to people over the last few years, among the changes, it really is a case of right now, doctors and lawyers are kings. In the very near future, it's computer programmers that are kings. Literally, they manipulate reality. They create reality for the rest of us to enjoy. So think about that. What could you program that might manifest or create a field of frequencies that would then manifest into something, So
right, that would make sense if you had to create some type of machinery, electronic, that does something with frequencies. You would have to be a coder, for sure, to do that.
Yeah. So, when you see the future and you see the amount of technology in it, it's mind-blowing. And the technologies are extraordinary, and all done by computer programming. So, and it's the people who know that programming and who work at that who literally are responsible for creating the world of our future. So, I've been a couple of times just had my own mind blown looking at the different kinds of transport, the different kinds of buildings, what the buildings will do.
Oh, yeah, the glass domes and things that are in your book.
And even beyond that. So, we have these amazing, almost everybody's involved with and working on the web in the future.
Is it safe to say, right now, today, looking forward for you, just you, you, scary side of things coming or brighter, interesting, fun things? Although I understand there's probably some scary things coming. Is the future bright, you say, more so than, scary?
Oh, it's very bright. Oh, my gosh. Yes. What happens is a lot of the, I'll call it the old-timers, and that it really includes people in my age group, but their way of life kind of fades as they die out. And it's superseded tremendously by new ideas, new ways, new technology, new ways of growing food, new ways of healing, new ways of organizing, new ways of governing, all sorts of really exciting, wonderful things happening. If you want to stay with the old, you can do that, and that it kind of drags on, but eventually it's like my grandmother, is saying, when she started out, they had buggies, horse and buggies, and button-up shoes, and kerosene lanterns. And, by the time she died at 101, by the time she was, old, really old, in her 80s and 90s, she was like, wow, look at the changes in the world. That same amount of change happens for us just in the next, I'm going to say, 10 to 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah, lots of very, very powerful changes. And those who want to stay with the old won't last, because the old systems are degenerative systems. They don't nurture regeneration within the human body or the human consciousness. And so people won't last very long. And we have new things out there now that are expanding life to 160, 200, 250 years. So, you can get a lot done if you don't have to start over every 70 years.
Sure. That's incredible. So I think we'll wrap this up, but I feel like a lot of people are going to hear that you said you had a B&B, bed and breakfast.
Oh, yeah.
Is that where you're at? Is that where you're at right now?
Yeah.
Do you want to give yourself a little advertising shout out? Because I'll tell you right now, people are probably going to start.
I'm booked up for the rest of the year, so it'd probably not be very helpful if I had to respond to all that and say, I'm sorry, no. I do have a class in September that, people could come to that, and but it's limited. I only allow 10 people at a time, although I'm getting my class, I should have my class up online by the end of August, so we'll see. And that's going to expand the possibilities a whole bunch. Once I got the message, okay, start. It's time, to start talking, start, being more available. Once I got that message, then it was like, okay, I can put my classes online without worrying. So, or at least, without as much worry.
Yeah. Good. Excellent. Well, Penny, I'm so glad you had the time today. I was waiting all week long, just counting the days down.
All right.
Because I was so excited. It was funny because you said you used to watch me for a while, and you would use me as a gauge, my subscribers and their comments and things as a gauge to kind of figure out what level of consciousness or awaken are these people at. I had no idea that was what my channel was for you, which is funny because I'm happy to have you on. Like you watch me, I'm ready to watch you. Like today was. How that reversed, it was really neat. So
I know
it's exciting.
While I was watching you, that was really quite a long time ago. I remember thinking a couple of times, I really like his style. I really like the way, and you were just reporting on, did you see this, and did you, different news stories.
Yep.
And what I was watching was the awareness level of the population. They're waking up to the kinds of corruption that was going on, and thinking, okay, it's still got a long ways to go. But I think
but it wasn't that long though, huh? I mean,
no.
I think we're ready.
Yeah. And I think we're probably going to hit that wave of information at the end of August and through the end of September. And so I tell people, just hang on. Even though I consider myself to be really good at handling all kinds of information, when I saw that, which it was years ago, I was sick. It was just not good, and I couldn't get it off my mind. And so I'm kind of like.
So, just to beat around the bush a second, the stuff that's fixing to be coming out, news items, so to speak,
right?
Exposing certain things that have been happening.
Yes.
Besides just corruption, I'm going to assume.
Right.
You're saying get ready for it because there's gonna be some pretty disturbing things along with that need to be exposed but are coming.
It does. That stuff needs to stop. I actually sat down and cried over and over every time I thought about it, and then it would be like, I need to do something, and then it would be like, okay, I was told to stay out of the teardown, sit down and shut up and just watch. And so, we're coming now to where that's all going to be exposed, and it's going to be a hard thing. There's going to be some tears.
Were you, because I think I might have the answer, but I'm just gonna say it. When you did that interview with that other lady we were talking about earlier, in April, you had said on there, "Oh, there's some things that I saw that I don't want to repeat because I don't want to cry. I might start crying."
Oh,
is that what we're talking about right now?
Yeah.
Like, is that okay? And can I just sum that up by asking just simple yes or no? The stuff that may make you cry, which is what you're alluding to now. Does this have to do with children and bad things?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Good, because I say good because it does need to come out, and we need to get past this. And some of these people need to pay, and they need to go to jail, and they need to serve time that, whatever the consequences they've done, made, need to be dealt with. And we also, and I say we, as humanity, who may not necessarily be, awoke, so to speak,
right?
Who may see that information, and that it may not be kundalini, but that might be, oh my God, I just got woken to a level of I would never believe what I just saw today.
Right.
That just happened, and this person just is doing a perp walk because they got in trouble, and oh my God, and this and that, which brings them to a level of, well, if that's been happening, and I didn't know about this,
right?
You're kind of upset. It makes you mad. When I first found out about some of the things that I've, it makes me mad. How was I lied to? How did I not know about that?
Yeah.
And I want to tell everybody, and they don't believe me. So now I'm getting more mad. Like, if I saw it, why can't you? Look.
Right.
No, I don't believe that. I don't believe that. It's right in your face. No, I don't believe that. This is one of those things that people are going to have to believe. And once it does, like you said, you can't unsee it.
That's right.
These people will realize, oh my God, if these people at the top that I voted for and that I thought were on my team, my Democratic team or whatever, Republicans too.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's going to be my world's crumbling. Some people probably going to have mental breakdowns. I would guess.
They have some pretty serious sleepless nights. We'll just leave it at that.
The people?
Serious, yeah. They just, some people really aren't going to handle it very well. They're going to want revenge, and that's messy. And so, there's just some things that I think we really need to be aware of, the need to be calming one another down and saying, hey, at least it's stopping. At least it's coming to an end.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's very important. And it's been a couple of years since I've seen some of the photos.
And when you say photos, the robes guy is showing you, correct?
No, these are photos.
Real photos.
Photos, yeah.
How were you able to see them?
You know what? I don't know. Stuff comes to me on my computer. I look at it. A lot of stuff comes to me. I have connections all around the world. And, there's a couple of pictures that I saw and I was like, it disturbed me for weeks and weeks. And so I think, we're just going to need to, calm one another down and be sensible. At the time I first saw some of these pictures, or shortly after I started seeing some of these, I wrote a blog. I think it's still up on my website, and it was titled something like, "Is Hillary Clinton the next Marie Antoinette?" And people didn't touch it hardly. And I thought, they don't get it. They don't have a clue what's going on. And, very few people said anything. But, we're going to see some of our heroes that we thought were heroes go down, and it's going to be a sad day. So. Yeah,
well, I'm sure a lot of people from Hollywood would be, because a lot of us look at, our favorite movie stars. Oh, they think they're so good. And then, my God, they were doing what? They were part of what? It's like finding out your father or your parents, were like a serial killer or something. You're like, oh, it's like devastating. My favorite, wrestler on TV when I was a kid, Hulk Hogan or something. Oh,
I know.
No way. Just tears you apart. So
I know.
Yeah, I could see it coming. I could see that happening. So.
Right.
Yeah. Listen, I'll let you go. Anytime if there's ever anything you feel like I need to say, I need to talk about, the robes came back and gave me something else, anything.
Okay.
Come to me, please, and I'll be glad to schedule any time.
I had a thought this morning that we should probably let a little bit of time go by, and you should read volume 3, and then we should talk about that. Consciousness and Energy volume 3 is part of a series, but the subtitle is Religion, Sex, Power, and the Fall of Consciousness. And I think people they're going to need to understand or have somebody guiding the conversation about religion, sex, and power. And those things are going to be right in our face this fall. So
Okay, so all right, volume 3. What was the first part of that book? The first.
Consciousness and Energy, volume 3. Maybe I'll send you a copy if you're willing to read it. And then,
Absolutely.
Okay, and then maybe we should talk about it. So I think it'll kind of enlighten a few people. So
Sounds good.
We have to start working together, and we have to understand the role that religion has played and the role that sex has played and power, and then how consciousness figures into all of that. So
Epic. I'll just reply to that email that I have of yours. I'll just give you my address and
okay,
maybe send me one. That'd be great.
Okay, that sounds good.
Wow, I'm so glad we had this chat today. I really appreciate you coming on. And
yeah, my pleasure. Must be
so
time to end.
Perfect time. So all right, we'll end it here.
Okay.
All right, take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.